I'm going to introduce you to Jade. We're going to have Jade coming on now to really walk us through how can we lead with purpose? How can we be driven by love, by our values during this crisis? And so, Jade, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Blessing.
And just to also add, you are also an independent presidential candidate.
Yeah, it's a bit of an add-on for real, isn't it? Yeah, I'm currently running for president as an independent in the 2020 election. You're right.
Oh, goodness. I am so proud of you. I mean, you are a rock star. You are bold. You are intelligent. And you also understand what this means for parents. You understand what this means for working families. You understand what this pandemic means for how we move forward. And so how do we move forward together as parents, as, husband, as wife, as employers? So would love for you to share more about that during the talk today. I'm going to leave you to do your thing and come back right up.
Okay. Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Jade Simmons, and I just want to welcome all of the parents, moms, dads, mentors, coaches, project leaders. I believe that we're all nurturers in some way, shape, or form. And what I'm going to discuss today, I truly believe, is going to help us not only in the raising of our kids, which is such a powerfully important purpose, but the things that we'll talk about today are also the concepts and mindsets and modes of operation that will help us build important projects out and that will help us be incredible developers of people. So I know that much of the conversation today will circle back to the concept of crisis and what's the new mode of operation when we're in a time of crisis. But here's the thing. What we're seeing is that the people who are faring well right now, the people who are not just surviving or thriving, but they're actually thriving, are people who have developed and established certain mindsets, certain habits, certain modes of operation well before the crisis happened. And so I believe even crisis-based parenting is something that's established outside of the time of crisis. I have operated as a coach for many years. And I have to be honest and tell you that a lot of my parenting hacks were informed by the issues that I saw as a coach. And they are familiar issues, and they have turned into tremendous tools when it comes to how I have, my husband and I have parented our kids. When you think about the recurring issues you see when you work with adults, and for me, I was seeing a recurring need for permission, to have someone co-sign your boldness or the big bold thing on your heart. And so as a parent, I knew I wanted my kids to have an innate ability to make powerful, independent decisions, to gather info from others and from the situation itself, to do your research, but to ultimately proceed as you see fit. I noticed that there were adults who were using past failures to guide their decisions. So I knew that as a parent, I wanted my kids to understand their past, but I wanted them to make decisions in the now based on new information, that the things that didn't work out in the past would inform them, but it wouldn't block them or determine the action they would take in the now. I think of another recurring issue I would see often in coaching was analysis paralysis. And so I knew that I wanted my kids to be thoughtful, but I didn't want them to be paralyzed by indecision, by doubt or insecurity. So those things informed kind of the philosophies or the theories behind how my husband and I parent. I want to start by performing for you because, and I think Blessing, of course, mentioned that I play the piano. I've made the majority of my career as a concert artist and a professional speaker, and I combine the two things to create these main stage experiences. So you can imagine that COVID-19 has put a halt on that in many ways because what I do is usually done in large gatherings with lots of people in close quarters. And so instantly my team and I had to figure out, how do we innovate all over again? And I think even with parenting right now, we're figuring out, how do we innovate all over again? How do we relate to our spouses differently? How do we relate to team members differently now in this time? And so for me, my entire career was always coming to these points, wasn't necessarily crisis, but these points where I was given the privilege of changing, given the opportunity to reinvent, given an invitation to do things differently, to do things bolder. But if I'm being honest, originally what I had planned to do was simply to play the piano. I think I'm actually going to take the headphones out here because I want to make sure you can hear the music as well. But my original, dream, I always say we have an original dream, was simply to play the piano. And so I'm going to play for you now so that you can hear what the original dream sounded like. This is a piece by Rachmaninoff, and it's a piece that I probably play pretty much every time I'm on stage. So I start there because that is what I always thought my purpose was, to play the piano. I began playing as a little girl, and all of the original childhood dreams that I had revolved around playing this instrument. All of the visions I had about what my future would hold had to do with this thing, this instrument, the piano. And what I want you to leave with today is an understanding that I've seen change many people's lives. It's definitely changed my own. It's a re-understanding of purpose. And the reason we have to re-understand it is because I do believe that most people live and die without ever truly discovering and understanding what purpose is. And I think the most effective parenting starts with being able to pass the gift of purpose down to our kids. So I thought that my purpose was to play the piano. And most people do think that their purpose is to do the thing they do. But if you don't remember anything else, remember this. Again, this is something I say on every stage, every platform, because to me, it's that life altering. It's that your purpose is not the thing you do. It is the thing that happens in others when we do what we do. When I realized that my purpose was not to play the piano, but that my purpose was the thing that happened in others when I played, I started to look for themes. When I would play, people felt things. They felt things differently than they had before. They felt more than they had before. When I started introducing speaking into my performances, that added another layer of experience. And so what ultimately happened is I began to be freed from the instrument and allowed to just create that same type of experience, whether it was people seeing things differently, feeling things differently, understanding themselves differently. I could then shift that true purpose to any vehicle I wanted. It didn't have to stay locked into the piano. And as parents, the biggest gift we can give our kids is the freedom of purpose, to understand that their worth, their value will never be caught up in the title they wear and the job they have, in the ability that they have, the skill that they may have been gifted with or may have learned or acquired, but that the magic is really in what breaks out because of them doing these things. And what happens there is they instantly lose the cage of conformity. You see, when we re-understand purpose in this way, you're helping your children. When you help them re-understand, your purpose is not to be a pianist. It's what happens in the audience when you express your gift. And if people are feeling a release, freedom, if they are gaining perspective, that's related to your purpose. And so then you can go and look for other places to give release, to help people gain freedom, to help them gain perspective. And you can do that in just about anything you choose to do. What happens is you're helping your child basically understand their effect on others. Imagine how much kinder of a world we would have if we truly understood our effect on others. I'm not talking about people pleasing. I'm not talking about conforming our personalities and ourselves for the benefit of others. I'm talking about understanding how you naturally relate. How awesome would it be to have kids pay attention now to their effect on others around them? Here's what I believe. When we're not consciously aware of our effect, we become subconscious about it. If we understand when I walk into a room, I'm designed to help people see themselves in a different light. That helps someone like me, who's actually a wallflower, believe it or not, be able to go into a room where they're supposed to be networking and not feel awkward. If I understand that in every conversation, at some point, people should feel better about themselves if I open my mouth, it gives me almost like a marching order. So again, we're not teaching our kids to people please. We're teaching a high level of social awareness at an early age. When is that really crucial? Right now in crisis. If we're not careful, we lose our ability to communicate in transformative ways. We allow fear to creep in. We allow lopsided thinking to creep in, agendas to creep in. Hyperpolarization creeps in if we're not careful. And Blessing was saying, how do we, love more effectively in this era? It always starts from a place of understanding. And understanding others always starts from a place of understanding ourselves. So imagine being able to help your child, your team members see their positive effect as a distinguishing gift, and then seeing it as a superpower, and then seeing it as a mandate. Good example, I have a team member who was identifying herself as hypercritical. She's like, I know I always nitpick. I'm really critical. I see all the things. And I said, that's a super skill. If you're on a team where people don't see the detail, you were literally designed to fill a void on the team. So what happens when now that person re-understands themselves not to be hypercritical or judgmental, but that they are uniquely designed with the super skill of spotting the missing pieces? When they can come in looking at it from that way, the room receives them differently. They begin to count on that person to help them find the things they're missing. Versus if that person comes in seeing themselves as critical, seeing themselves as nitpicking or annoying, then they're either going to not give the information they're designed to give, or they're going to deliver it in a way that says, I know you guys don't want to hear this, but here it is. Imagine if from a young age we can start to help our children, as managers, if we can start to help our team members see their unique sets of skills and personalities as a part of their purpose. So why is purpose important now, even for kids? I truly believe that purpose is a life guide. So I'm trying to reimagine my life if I had thought of purpose being my outbreak and not just my ability. A lot of things would have felt differently throughout my own life. If you think of your own detours that you've taken, if you'd understood that life was happening not to you, but it was happening for you, how many things would you have experienced differently? How much time would you not have lost to that feeling of disappointment, that overwhelm? How much time would you have saved? So I believe that when we help kids to understand purpose in this way, we give them more potential now to live lives of impact more than lives filled with regret. And we help them not just settle for previously expressed patterns of life that other people have modeled. That to be a doctor doesn't have to look like how all the other doctors have done it. To be a pianist doesn't have to look like that. It doesn't mean that your career and your life and your purpose ends on a stage, but that you can dare reinvent into a person that can provide solutions in other arenas. I also believe that one of the most powerful things we can do as parents is not to project our own purpose onto our kids. I'm just confession here. That's very difficult for me, especially earlier on, because as a dreamer, as a visionary, which I'm sure many of you are, I instantly had dreams and visions for my kids. And so understanding purpose early on, or not as early as I wanted to, but understanding purpose when I did in my own life allowed me a chance to say, okay, hands off a little bit. We always have to check the roots of the advice that we give to the people who are listening to us for guidance. And I always tell, whether it's coaching clients or my own kids, make sure that you're always being informed. with information that has a higher percentage of possibility than the percentage of past, P-A-S-T, in it. So all of us as humans tend to give advice out of our pain and out of our past. And so as a parent, I try to make sure that whenever I'm giving guidance, I'm not unknowingly limiting the possibility that could be ahead for my children. So my son also plays piano, but he's self-taught. He's taken a more different route than even I did as a youngster. And he's self-taught. Mommy does not interfere with his practice time because mommy would do it a certain way. And it's amazing to me that it hasn't dawned on him to come to mommy to find out how to do this. And what I'm realizing is he now has a built-in confidence that tells him, even though my mother also plays the piano, most likely my path on this instrument is not going to be like hers. And he's okay with exploring on his own. I'm not always as okay, I'll admit. But it's a powerful thing to see him be able to grasp that my life may not look like my mother, who is not only related to me, but does the thing that I want to do. So I think what's really powerful is to understand that when we give advice to our kids, when we give guidance, we think from a perspective of, even though this is how it went for me, all things are always made new all the time, including you, including your children, including possibilities. So it's a difficult thing to sometimes unlink our past as we give advice, but it's a powerful thing because it enables your child to have blinders on that says, you know, I know what's happened before. I can't see what's coming, but right here in the now, there may be new possibilities for me. And I always ask people when you get advice to see if the misgivings that people are having as they present their advice to you are founded. See if they are still current, and then make your decision moving forward. You know, as a pianist, especially in classical music, we had an idea of how we would sound. There are certain pieces you always play in classical music. So as I get ready to close here, what I'm going to do is play a version of Flight of the Bumblebee that's the expected version. It's what people thought my career should sound like as a classical pianist. But I can tell you that because of the effect of allowing your purpose to evolve, meaning that it gets to ride itself out in different vehicles, there is a freedom that comes not only for you as the individual, but it comes for everybody that you're impacting. And you'll start to see a pattern, a trademark in your own life. And you then decide to intentionally take that pattern and lay it down into the future. And so for me, I always understood that curiosity was going to be important. So even I would start with something familiar, but then I would have to get curious. So I'm going to start with a very familiar piece, which is Flight of the Bumblebee. And then I'm going to end with another version of that, because I think the most powerful thing we can do for our kids is to empower them with purpose, remind them that it's not just the playing, the executing of the skill, the job, the title that you'll one day attain, the sport that you play. It's what happens in others. And when you realize that, and when they realize that, it gives them this liberty to try new things, to be curious. So for me, as an African-American female classical pianist, I always say I would be in rooms sometimes where there weren't many people who looked like me or were in the same age bracket as I was. And in the beginning, I didn't really take note. I was busy doing what was familiar and what was expected. Much of that sounded like this. Here is Rimsky-Korsakov's Flight of the Bumblebee. And then I'm going to end now with another version of Flight of the Bumblebee that can only be played when you get curious. When you decide that you don't need permission from anyone to make the next big, bold reinvention. You don't have to explain why you're doing it, because you know that your purpose is to help people see things differently, expand the current perspective that they have, and you decide now that you're going to lean into that. And there's such a wonderful exploration that happens for your kids and a freedom that comes for you as a parent when you allow them to get curious about what they are really on this earth to do and about what type of outbreak they're designed to give. I'm going to end now with this jazzier version of Flight of the Bumblebee that I really feel symbolizes, especially for me, what it's like when you dare to take what's been familiar, you get curious about it, and you ask yourself, what's the effect that I'm designed to have? I know that I've been put on this earth to not only bring joy, but to help people experience boldness within themselves and to develop the ability to take a risk that's going to create more broader, lasting impact in the world around them. Thank you so much for listening. I'll end now with a jazzy version of Flight of the Bumblebee. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jade. That was really amazing. I really love the way you, and that's one of the reasons we wanted to start with the parenting aspect, because I think that, you know, a lot of us, as we go through this, we're talking about, oh my goodness, you know, how is this affecting moms and dads and work and all those different things? And we're not exactly looking at the kids and saying, how is this affecting them? What are the things that I can teach them right now? I can instill in them or even show them as a way to respond to crisis, because this has never happened before, right? I think it's every 100 years you get into a real global pandemic. And
so wouldn't it be a great blessing if we could take with us this period of self-reflection and now build that into our everyday life, that we don't have to wait every 100 years to be able to sit still and teach these kinds of lessons. So I feel like these lessons on purpose and understanding now must be carried with us into our new normal. So thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.